Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Sisterhood, The 99ers and the Rise of U.S. Women's Soccer by Rob Goldman, narrated by Gina Rogers. Publisher's note. In this audio edition, you may hear references to visual elements present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Part 1. Rough and Tumblers. 1. The Mavericks. Bank of California Stadium, Los Angeles, April 7, 2019. It's game day. The national team is hosting Belgium, and the site of the old LA Sports Arena is rocking. The venue, rocker Bruce Springsteen tagged "The Dump That Jumps," has gone the way of the wrecking ball and was replaced by state-of-the-art Bank of California Stadium. The building was made possible by a group of investors, including Magic Johnson and Mia Hamm. To christen the place, an alumni group chaired by Becky Sauerbrunn and Alex Morgan invited a number of former national team members to the event. The gathering is unprecedented. Several generations of national team players all together for the first time. The old sports arena site, like the national team, had transcended into the 21st century. The old guard kicking the ball to the new kids, the ghost of the sports arena clinging to its last vestiges of memory before the wrecking ball vanquishes it into oblivion. Invitees include the Charter 1985 national team. A meet and greet is held a day before the match in a plush stadium lounge. Midway through the festivities, two former teammates, Emily Pickering-Harner and Michelle Akers, reunite. A conversation ensues, and Pickering is shocked to hear Akers tell her husband Stephen that it was Emily who first set the bar for the national team. Pickering is flattered. In her mind, Akers set the bar. The truth is, both players were instrumental. In the early 1980s, Pickering helped lead the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, UNC, to 3 national championships. Those early Carolina clubs, in turn, set the tone for the first national team. Pickering's aggressive, no-holds-barred, kick-ass approach was what her coach Anson Dorrance was looking for in his players. Pickering and other rough-and-tumblers like Akers, April Heinrichs, and Lori Henry became the prototypes for Carolina and the early national teams. But it was Pickering, in particular, who possessed the killer instinct that set her apart. Emily took on everybody: opponents, teammates, referees, fans, even coaches. Inspired by her grit, Akers integrated the mentality of the Massapequa-born New Yorker into her own game. Akers' compliment was especially gratifying to Pickering. Historical videos and books generally offer snippets of the first teams, then fast forward to the 99ers. The 85ers barely get a mention. But the national team didn't emerge from pixie dust. To become the 99ers, they had to first go through the 85ers, and it took strong-willed, hard-hitting warrior beasts like Pickering and Akers to get the proverbial soccer ball rolling. Pickering wondered why those early teams were rarely acknowledged. Without them, this week's USA versus Belgium match at the swank Bank of California Stadium could never have happened. The reunion is a 2-day event, and before the match the following day, the 99ers were invited to the field for introductions and photos. Pickering's 1985 squad, with the exception of Akers, remained upstairs. Despite the slight, Emily's heart swelled. The thousands of fans and the kids in Alex Morgan jerseys and multicolored face paint inspired her. Knowing she'd been partly responsible for all this filled her with pride. As the 99ers were announced, Pickering became nostalgic. Her mind drifted back to a hot, sultry summer day in Baton Rouge in 1985. She was 22, and her Southern Regional Club was at the Olympic Sports Festival ready to take on the West for the tournament championship. They were getting set to play when, seconds before the opening whistle, Pickering's coach, Anson Dorrance, pulled Emily and teammate Michelle Akers aside with some exciting news. "Listen," Dorrance barked. "A national team is in the works. Mike Ryan's coaching. He's a stickler for detail, so if you want to make the team, wear your socks up and your shirt sleeves out. This is how we always wear 'em, Pickering replied. Do it, Emily. Look professional. You need to prove to Ryan you belong. The news of a new national team didn't impress Pickering as much as her socks. It wasn't until 1985 that the U.S. Soccer Federation started requiring shin guards, and it happened because everyone was concerned about contracting AIDS. We thought it was weird, given we generally didn't bleed from our shins, but we get strawberries on our hip and thighs if we slide tackle, says Pickering. There was such a fear of AIDS that this is what they came up with, and it forced us to use our socks as shin guards. So for the start of the match, we wore our socks up and shirt sleeves not tucked in our bras, lest Ryan think we're mavericks. The West Regional won the match and the tournament. Afterward, participants from all the regions settled on the grass for the awards ceremony. Included in the group was North Regional sweeper and tournament MVP, Linda Gancitano. After the medals were dispersed and Gancitano received her award, the presenter informed the entire group he had some special news. "We have a surprise," he boasted over the loudspeakers. "We are pleased to announce the first U.S. women's soccer team. In 2 weeks, they'll be going to Italy for Mundialito Cup. Will the following new national team players please come up to the podium?" "We were all sitting on the grass," recalls Gancitano. "I'm on my knees in my grass-stained socks, and one by one Mike Ryan called us up. He said we've been invited to Italy for a tournament and had 2 weeks to get ready. He said he would push through our passports, and we were to meet at CW Post in Long Island to train a couple of days before flying to Milan." Ryan introduced the players to his assistant coach, Roger Rogers, from England, currently living in Alabama. Rogers had chosen the East Coast and Southern players, and Ryan picked players from the West, including 4 from his Seattle club team. From the sidelines, Carolina's Anson Dorrance looked on with mixed emotions. If there was resentment, he didn't show it. Granted, he coveted the national team coaching job, but Ryan was chosen on merit. His Seattle club team had won 3 consecutive championships. The highest level of the women's game took place in the Seattle-Tacoma area. Dorrance knew in the mid-1980s the women's game went through Seattle. He also knew the decision to form a national team didn't happen overnight. Ever since President Nixon signed Senator Birch Bayh's Title IX into law in 1972, a small but determined group of volunteers had been trying to raise U.S. women's soccer into the forefront. Title IX was the equivalent of the Emancipation Proclamation for female athletes. All publicly funded schools and universities were mandated by law to have female teams and receive scholarships on par with male athletes. The bill liberated females from the obscurity of club and recreation teams into the spotlight of universities and colleges. The volunteers gained traction when a group of advocates headed by Marty Mankemeyer, a chairwoman for the United States Youth Soccer Association, took on the USSF, United States Soccer Federation, or U.S. Soccer, with their demands. She had pushed in vain to get women's soccer into the 1984 Olympics, but the effort did not go unnoticed. In the summer of 1985, the USSF received an invitation from organizers of the prestigious Mundialito Cup to field a women's team in their annual summer tournament in Italy. The same year, the United States Olympic Committee finally accepted women's soccer at their amateur summer sports festival in Baton Rouge. It was an incredible coincidence given women's soccer was not even an Olympic event yet, recalls Pickering. Volunteers spent countless hours pushing for the women's national team, and they were a big driving force for getting things started. Names I remember were Chuck Blazer, Mavis Derflinger, Frank Baroni, and Betty D'Angelo, but many others helped get it through. The summer events finally thrust U.S. women's soccer onto the national limelight. But for Emily Pickering, it would be the start of a short but memorable national team career. For Linda Gancitano, a blaze of glory before a devastating knee injury ended her career. For Michelle Akers, it marked the beginning of a 15-year odyssey that concluded at the 1999 World Cup and the Soccer Hall of Fame. For Akers, her journey started with a letter. A few days before the start of the Olympic Sports Festival, she received a note from the U.S. Soccer Federation on their official stationery. Congratulations, you have been chosen by U.S. Soccer to participate in the players' pool and come to Baton Rouge. I had no idea what at all I was getting into, recalls Akers. I never got a letter like that, and I had no idea what the U.S. national team or U.S. Soccer Federation was, but it all looked super important and fun. I was excited just to go play soccer. Growing up in the Seattle suburbs, Akers was obsessed with sports and soccer. Tall for her age, she dominated every team she played on. Stronger and more skilled than her peers, Akers got the attention of several colleges, including Anson Dorrance at UNC and Jim Rudy at Central Florida University, CFU. During her recruitment trip to Chapel Hill, players tried in vain to convince Akers to come to Carolina, but she thought Dorrance was arrogant and chose Central Florida. Stacey Enos, a Carolina defensive back at the time, recalls Akers' decision. Michelle said Carolina was the best team and she wanted to be able to beat the best, says Enos. She thought she could prove herself more by pitting herself against UNC. I was sad when she chose Central Florida, but respected her choice. Akers admits she was no match with Pickering's activities off the pitch, but on the field she was every bit the competitor. By the time Dorrance ordered Michelle to lift up her socks and pull her shirt sleeves out at the Olympic Sports Festival, she had been selected to numerous paper national teams and collegiate All-American teams. Linda Gancitano, a teammate of Akers at Central Florida, says Michelle possessed a presence and talent that couldn't be quantified. My boyfriend Bruce was a pro soccer player and he'd visit me at Central Florida and we would practice together, says Gancitano. Bruce was drilling Michelle on heading one day and she leapt up in the air and just exploded like a rocket. As a sweeper, I could serve the ball to her anywhere on the field and Michelle was going to win that ball. Any ball that I ever served her, she got. She's the best player I ever played with. Even at a young age, Michelle had it all. Unlike Akers, Emily Pickering never received official notice about a national team. A star athlete at Massapequa's McDonald High in Long Island, she was 18 when Dorrance snagged her for Carolina in 1981. Pickering played with distinction at Chapel Hill. She helped lead the Tar Heels to 4 national championships and shared the captaincy with April Heinrichs. Typical of the early players, Pickering earned her chops by rejecting traditional social mores. I was the self-professed weird girl who played sports, recalls Pickering. I wasn't like the rest of the girls who wanted to play with dolls and wear pink. I was a tomboy who wanted to wrestle and play in the dirt. Growing up in Massapequa wasn't easy for Emily. The 7th of 8 siblings, she was only 6 when a drunk driver killed her brother. In high school, her best friend was killed in a car crash returning from a soccer tournament. Then in July 1985, a month before the Olympic Sports Festival, a car accident killed her 2 best friends. Her father later died from AIDS from a tainted blood transfusion. All that made me rough at the edges, Pickering admits. Sports allowed me to pool my energies into something without fear of retribution. It gave me an edge, and I took it to the pitch. Like many of her peers, Pickering played soccer with a vengeance and partied just as hard off the pitch. Pickering could hold her own in the bars along Chapel Hill's Franklin Street, then scared the bejesus out of her teammates at practice the next day with a full-on performance. It didn't matter what she partook in the night before, Pickering always rose to the occasion. Whether it was with her punishing play or finishing near the top of the physically demanding Carolina endurance runs, Pickering never backed down. It's not like we were out drinking before games, says Pickering. The legal age was 18 then, and I was no different than any other college student. I just happened to be one of many. On or off the pitch, Pickering was not easily intimidated, as evidenced by a run-in she had during her sophomore season with one of Carolina's rising sports stars. One evening, Emily and a teammate were cruising Chapel Hill's Franklin Street near the Rathskeller, a popular student hangout, when they bumped into a familiar face. It was spring 1983, and Carolina men's basketball just won the NCAA title, recalls Pickering. We were trying to earn money to go to Europe and having a contest to raffle off a TV. Walking down Franklin with my roommate, Ann Beatty, we ran into Michael Jordan. I said, "Hey, Michael, would you like to buy a raffle ticket?" Michael's like, "No." I looked at him and said, "We support you and your team. You should support us." So he opened his wallet, and there's only $1, and he gave it to us, and he got a raffle ticket. We were like, "Yeah!" Enos claims buried beneath Pickering's rough exterior was a kind soul. Emily had some hardships throughout her family, but she has a heart of gold and was a great teammate, says Enos. She was also our team's roughest player. She took control of the midfield at Carolina, and if you weren't where you were supposed to be, she'd let you know it. In one breath, she would be screaming, "Don't lose your friggin' mark!" The next minute, she'd be slapping you on the back saying, "That play was friggin' brilliant." Anson appreciated her, and I loved her. According to Pickering, in the early days, Dorrance was awkward around women players. "I was 18 and Anson's 30 when we met," says Pickering. "He was just a puppy then, trying to establish himself, and was very robotic. We didn't have competitive cauldrons back then or leadership meetings, and we didn't talk about our feelings much. It was an interesting time, and Anson treated us just like the men, so we trained just like the men." Enos says Dorrance was still trying to find his identity, and at times could be standoffish. "In the early days, Anson only wore a white shirt and white shorts," recalls Enos. "That was his training gear, and he had multiple sets of the same shirts and shorts. His coaching gear was blue pants and a white shirt. It was like he was in the military. He had his hair combed forward and was very structured. Over the years, I think he realized he could have some personality and enjoy himself a little bit more. I remember the first time he showed up in a pair of jeans. We couldn't believe it. We're like, 'Anson has jeans, and he's combed his hair back.' It was a huge deal." Following the Olympic Sports Festival, Akers, Enos, Gancitano, and Pickering joined the rest of the national team at C.W. Post University on Long Island. For 2 days, they lived in the dorms and scrimmaged with local club teams. A cheerleading camp was happening at the same time, and cheerleaders led cheers each morning under their windows. The night before they departed for Italy, 16 blue, diagonally striped, discarded U.S. men's jerseys were doled out to the team. Volunteers and some of the players' parents spent the night sewing patches on the sleeves and hemmed the shorts and jerseys. Legend says the players sewed the patches on themselves, but Pickering says it wasn't the case. "It was a cute little story that has taken off as a fact, and historians repeat it," says Pickering. "We had men's uniforms, and maybe they were a tad big, but we were missing some required patches. I never sewed anything, and neither did my teammates. It was a nice story Mike Ryan made up, and like anything else, it took flight." Stacy Enos still has her original shirt. It had this kind of bulky patch, and everyone was trying to figure out where to put it. I don't remember any of the players sewing them, but if there was one who liked to sew, I could see that happening. There were no dramatic send-offs at New York's JFK Airport when the team departed for Italy. The passenger list included 16 players, Mike Ryan, Dr. Roger Rogers, who doubled as trainer, an equipment manager, general manager, Chuck Blazer, a woman doctor, and a volunteer who helped with laundry. As the team stepped onto the Skyway and boarded the plane for Italy, they had no premonition they were pioneering a movement that would someday change the culture for female athletes and thrust women's soccer onto the worldwide stage. At the time, they had no way of knowing the national team would someday become role models, advocates, and beacons for social justice. All that was the future. In August 1985, the national team players were mavericks who wanted to follow their hearts and play soccer. There was no money in it, and except for their families, the first national team was as relevant to outsiders as a punctured soccer ball on a muddy high school pitch. At that stage, I didn't conceptually get the sense other countries had been playing soccer and were competing against each other, recalls Enos. I had a few days at home before driving up to New York. I remember spinning a globe around with my dad and putting my finger down and him saying, "I think you're heading to this area of the world." I had no idea what I was getting into, and neither did my teammates. In 1985, a team of American female soccer players traveling to Italy to play in a tournament was unheard of. As the group made their way onto the plane in their matching white-collar shirts, Adidas jackets and shoes, and their short blue tennis shorts with big pockets, people mistook them for a tennis team. "We were all jacked up, singing, and just being silly," recalls Pickering. "People kept asking, 'What are you?' and 'Why are you here?' 'A women's national team. What's that?' We had a great time telling them who we were." Akers compares the first step of their soccer journey to climbing Mount Everest. "You got your backpack on and you're looking up at the mountain, except you can't see the mountain," says Akers. "You only know you are going someplace you've never been before and doing the thing that you love, and that's all we cared about." Of the 16 national team players, Michelle Akers was the most physically gifted. As a freshman at CFU, she led the Lady Knights to the NCAA quarterfinals before losing to Carolina. Her aggressive style captured the soccer world's attention, but Akers wasn't in it for accolades. She gauged her success on personal goals and not judgments from others. Her mindset allowed her to focus on her play and personal improvement. In time, her work ethic, drive, and skill would set her above the pack, but for now, she typified thousands of young female soccer players across the country. High school and college teams were sprouting up everywhere, breaking sexist barriers and changing America's athletic and societal landscape. Unbeknownst to Akers, she and her group were riding point on a cultural shift. Their plane to Italy was, in essence, filled with quiet revolutionaries. But for now, as the jumbo jet lumbered over the dark Atlantic, the soccer mavericks rested. Akers, Gancitano, and goalie Kim Wyant clustered together by the emergency exit and fell asleep on the floor. As they neared the European continent, the plane hit turbulence, and emerging from her slumber, Akers looked around. She could see Mike Ryan in the ambient glow of his cabin light going over game notes and drinking whiskey. She and Ryan weren't getting along, so she looked for someone else close by to talk with. But Linda and Kim were asleep. Only Ryan was awake, feverishly writing notes, sipping Jack Daniels as if he was at the corner bar in Dublin. With nothing else to do, Michelle gazed out at the dark Atlantic. That she was part of the first U.S. women's national team still hadn't registered. All of this was new, a grand adventure, and an excuse to play soccer at the highest level. "It was how I feel when I first get on a horse," Akers recalls. "I love exactly where I am and what I'm doing, and yet I have no idea what's going to happen." Most of the other players would agree. They were on the cusp of something big. They just didn't know what it was. For now, they were just in it for the adventure and love for the game. 2. USA! USA! Ah! The Mundialito Cup, also known as the Little World Cup, was a prestigious 4-team tournament featuring the best women's soccer teams in Europe. The U.S. team was scheduled for 4 matches: Italy, Denmark twice, and England. The first 2 matches were held at Stadio Comunale Armando Picchi in Jesolo. The third match against England was scheduled at Stadio Comunale Giovanni Chigiato in Caorle. No one expected the U.S. team to win anything. "We flew into Milan and then got on a bus," recalls Linda Gancitano. "It was a long ride and there was no speed limit, so everyone was just flying. The hotel had windows opening to the sea and we had an ocean breeze. We tried to get something to eat at certain times of the day, and we'd go into stores and there's nobody taking money. It was my first experience with the siesta. Located on the Mediterranean, Jesolo is a tourist destination known for its azure waters and sandy beaches. In Roman times, a lagoon covered the area now dominated by the town. There were several islands in the lagoon, the biggest of which was known as Equilum, the place of horses. Jesolo represents an altered form of this name. In ancient times, fishing boats and harbors lined the beaches, but now sunbathers inhabited the sandy coastline. It was hard for the coaches to stay away. The women were all topless, recalls Michelle Akers. All I remember is Mike Ryan and Roger Rogers sure liked hanging out on the beach. Women don't wear tops in Italy, and we all had them on, adds Stacy Enos. People were shouting, Americanos, laughing at us. They figured us for prudes. While the staff checked out the scenery, Akers and her teammates rented a board and tried windsurfing. They sailed a couple of miles before realizing they couldn't turn it around. They left the board on the beach and had to walk back 2 miles to the hotel. Back in town, they discovered another treat. Someone had a cappuccino, Akers recalls. I tried theirs and liked it. I had 3 cups a day every day I was there, 1 in the morning, 1 at lunch, and 1 right before bed. I'd bring it up to my room, put the sugar in, and I'm thinking, this is the most amazing thing I've ever had in my life. Meanwhile, I'm drinking espresso, trying to go to sleep at night. Accompanying the group to Italy was their general manager, future international soccer guru, Chuck Blazer. It was Blazer's initial entree into women's soccer, and according to Gancitano, he was eyeing more than the team's logistics. I don't know if he had crushes on some of the girls, but whenever we were downstairs getting stuff to eat or drink or whatever, Chuck told me to charge it to his room, and so that's what we would do. I don't know if he had a crush on me. I have no idea. I just thought that was kind of funny. It's ironic that Blazer, a future player in the growth of women's soccer and who would be someday charged for corruption, already had a roguish element to him. The Americans found the locals accommodating and friendly. The plan was to play matches every 2 days, then hit the discotheques and party. We were getting invites for dinners and stuff like that, recalls Gancitano. If there was a curfew, I don't remember it. Game number 1, USA versus Italy, August 18th. When the national team bus arrived at Stadio Comunale Armando Picchi for their first match, players were sent to the locker room underneath the stands to change into their uniforms. They then entered the pitch through a tunnel. Tiers of seats sat in 3 rows on the locker room side. A bank of tall trees towered over the pitch opposite them. Armed guards secured the perimeter, protecting players from potential hooligans and rowdy fans. As they stepped onto the brown, rough-shod, water-depleted pitch, players were nervous but found it exciting being away from home and around people who didn't speak English. Before the match, national anthems of both teams played. It was the first time the Star-Spangled Banner played for the national team in competition. For Stacy Enos, the anthem combined with her naivete supplied some unintended drama. We hadn't done any trial runs, says Enos. It's not like we practiced the anthem in Long Island, like, here's the anthem, we want you to put your hand over your heart. There was no precedent, and we just didn't know what to do. I've watched the men's U.S. team, but in Italy we lined up wearing a patch that has the stars and stripes on, and the national anthem comes on. I just remember smiling, thinking, I'm singing the national anthem. And I felt this deep sense of wonderment. I couldn't believe I was playing for my country in the first game ever for the U.S. women's national team. Linda Gancitano's sentiments are comparable, but with an Italian twist. I remember singing, crying, and getting goosebumps when they played the anthem, she said. But being the only Italian on the team, I heard a lot of fans calling for my last name. For Michelle Akers, her anthem experience differed somewhat from her teammates. She admits she didn't yet grasp the significance of the national team, And during one practice, she says Ryan reprimanded the players for their perceived lack of patriotic zeal. I wasn't the only...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?